Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bellingham City Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, May 9th, 2022. Going to call the meeting to order and begin with announcements and upcoming meetings. So Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Meetings Act. On May 16th, 2022 at 6:00 p.m., Bellingham City Council will hold its second town hall meeting remotely via Zoom. The second town hall meeting will be devoted to community voices on public safety. You may join the meeting via the link https://www.cob.org/event/cc town hall -05162022. That link can be found in the packet as well as on our city council website, the meetings site, where you can join the town hall through streaming or follow the Zoom link to attend and provide comment. So with that, I'm going to turn to roll call. And this evening, I will also be acting as clerk. So I will begin with roll call with myself, President Hannah Stone. I'm present. Next, we have Holly Huthman. She is excused. Dan Hamill.
Here.
Edwin H. Skip Williams.
Here.
Trying to be official. Lisa Anderson.
Here.
Michael Lillquist.
I'm here.
Christina Michelle Martins.
Here.
Thank you very much. So we do have a quorum. We are 6 present with Councilmember Huthman excused. So now with roll call, we will turn to the mayor's report and our own mayor, Seth Fleetwood.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm going to spare you all a lengthy report tonight. I'm just going to do a couple appointments and that's it. Call it a wrap. So I will just announce that I am going to be appointing Christina Byrne to the Bellingham-Whatcom County Commission on Sexual and Domestic Violence. That is information only. And I'm also going to be appointing Jed Holmes to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and that too is information only. And that concludes my mayor's report. Back to you, President.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fleetwood. There's nothing further from the mayor's office. We will begin with report outs from our committee meetings today. We only had 2 committee meetings, but a very long day. We started this morning at 9 o'clock with Public Works and Natural Resources. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Lillquist. So I will turn it over to him at this time.
Thanks so much, Hannah. We had 4 items before us today or this morning. The first of those was consideration of a bid award for Little Squalicum Creeks Estuary Project. Project EN 052, bid number 16B-2022. This project creates a new intertidal estuary in the Little Squalicum Park and relocates Little Squalicum Creek itself to a new fish passable channel and outlet. The city received 4 bids, which were publicly opened on April 19th, 2022, and Glacier Environmental Services was the responsible bidder who submitted the lowest responsive bid at $3,474,179.48, which includes Washington State sales tax. And the engineer's estimate was close at $3,208,706.46, which is less than a 10% difference. Of further note, the total project budget is actually more than that. The total project, including design and construction, is just over $4.1 million. And in addition, 30% of this funding, or approximately $1.2 million, is from several city funds shared between several of them. And 70% of it consists of various grants, mostly from state agencies. And actually, there were a handful of grants covering a variety of purposes and needs, because this program kind of hits on a whole lot of angles in terms of environmental remediation. This project has been decades in the making. And in addition, there will be an open house this May 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Bellingham Technical College. So that'll be in Building G, the Technical College, in the evening, 6 to 8 p.m. to discuss this project and let the public know exactly what will be happening to the park and to the new estuary. This afternoon, the committee unanimously recommended awarding the bid to excuse me, what is it again? Glacier Environmental Services, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that passes 6-0 with one excused being Councilmember Huffman.
Okay, great. And the second item was consideration of amendments to the Bellingham Municipal Code, in particular, Chapter 15.42. Staff presented the amendments, which are required actually as part of the city's NPDES Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit. That permit is issued to the city by Washington State Department of Ecology, and they do so in accordance with the Federal Clean Water Act. The required changes include technical updates and creation of an inspection program for the control of stormwater pollution from existing development. As staff indicated today, the city actually has already had an inspection program, and so we're really just changing the program we had before to now meet the new state requirements. Approval of the proposed amendments is consistent with the Surface and Stormwater Comprehensive Plan that the City Council previously adopted. And in seeking public comment, staff are not aware of any public comments that were received on this. As I said, these are required amendments to be in compliance with regulatory laws. The inspection program of note is voluntary. All governed properties are required to meet the stormwater standards, but the inspection program is voluntary because it's really meant to help people out, provide education, technical assistance, help to bring them into compliance. It's really not about finding fault and issuing fines, which is not the goal at all. I think that just about includes a discussion on that. And so there is an ordinance in here which includes all those required changes and amendments to the code. This morning, the committee unanimously recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Williams. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused.
The next item wasn't an action item. It was a high-level discussion item. It was introduction of the city's 6-year transportation improvement program. All cities, towns, and counties in Washington State are required to annually develop and adopt a 6-year transportation improvement program, also known as a transportation improvement plan. The state law requires each city to adopt the TIP July 1st of each year. So it's basically a 6-year rolling program. Each year it's adopted to focus on the next 6 years. Bellingham's TIP is consistent with the long-term Bellingham Comprehensive Plan, and also specifically with the bicycle and pedestrian plans, as well as our ADA transition plan, road safety plan, and climate action plan. In other words, we try to have an alignment between all of our projects and the various plans that we have to address needs. Once approved, the 6-year TIP is then used to inform recommendations that actually go into the 2-year budget for specific projects. The presentation today focused on the background and the overall purpose of the TIP prior to introducing the actual TIP, which will be at our next meeting on May 23rd. Currently, the Transportation Commission is reviewing a draft of the proposed 2023 through 2028 6-year TIP, and they will have recommendations for us by the time of our meeting. In addition, there was a required public hearing before the City Council on the 6-year TIP, and that will be scheduled again at the May 23rd meeting. That was for information only. No action was taken. The final item was a rather lengthy discussion that I hesitate to summarize. Let me read the summary statement and add a few more of the notes on that. It has to do with the Post Point Resource Recovery Project. Post Point Resource Recovery Project basically has to do with our sewer treatment plant. In particular, the focus was on utility rates and funding for that project. The recovery project will replace the solids handling portion of Post Point. The project will replace all elements of the solid handling system, including the buildings, odor control, incinerators, solids equipment, and other elements. The core elements will replace the failing incinerators with a new thermophilic anaerobic digester process. to manage the organic biosolids produced at Post Point. The project team this morning updated the council on the financial model in particular and provided a recommended strategy to fund the project through a combined rate increases and loans. The recommended action for this meeting is the adoption of the attached resolution authorizing the mayor and appropriate state official to submit a funding application to the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act Fund, that is a WIFIA loan. So the numbers for this project are huge. The current estimates for, well, there's several aspects to it. There's the run-of-the-mill sewer projects, which are in the millions of dollars every year. And in addition, the replacement of solids handling portion is now estimated to be cost around $260 million. And in addition to that, there's $40 million in related capital projects. Several years later on down the road, the city will be facing new requirements for what's called nutrient removal. And that nutrient removal is estimated to be an approximately $300 million project somewhere around the year 2028. Both of these large new projects require funding. And so the discussion is on how to affect that. The obvious conclusion is that, and the way the system works, is that ratepayers, you and I, will need to fund these improvements. And based on current rates, we can't fund these programs and we'll have to see significant rate increases phased in over several years. In particular, the rate increases will have to rise incrementally to the years at which the funding loans need to be taken out and payback needs to begin. So if we don't ramp up the utility rates before then, there'll be a huge doubling of basically utility rates in 1 year. So looking ahead, there was a determination that utility rates would need to increase, and the discussion had to do with the various factors that will go into how much that increase needs to be. Significant to that is if the city of Bellingham can borrow at a very good rate to fund the project, then the overall utility rates are less. And in particular, the federal program, the WIFIA program, allows us to borrow at very, very good rates. Originally, we estimated that we would borrow up to $136 million for the solids handling project. But as the project costs have increased, the eligible amount to be funded in the program have also increased. And so before us, we have a resolution to take up to the maximum amount of funding, that is up to 49% of the funding of the project, out as these very good interest loans. That is a task resolution, was unanimously recommended this morning by the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused.
Okay, that concludes the report of the Public Works and Natural Resources Committee.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lillquist. So this afternoon, we had a very robust committee of the whole, beginning with Agenda Bill 23338. So this was a presentation from the Whatcom County Prosecuting Attorney, Eric Ritchie. So during this session, Whatcom County Prosecuting Attorney Eric Ritchie provided an overview of his office's role in the criminal justice system and an update on local crime trends, recent legislation, and other related topics. This discussion, his presentation combined with question and answer went maybe 45 minutes or so. So again, I would encourage members of the community to go back and watch that presentation. And I wanted to provide an opportunity if there are members of the council who had particular things that he shared that you wanted to highlight. I'd be happy to provide you with an opportunity to do so. Yeah, Councilmember Lillquist.
One of the things that Eric emphasized is that the current jail restrictions, booking restrictions, other restrictions are leading to an unfortunate cycle where there's not immediate accountability. And accountability doesn't necessarily mean, he said, being put in jail, but even being booked into the system is a form of accountability. And that's why I think it's particularly good to hear that the county and the city administration here in Bellingham is working on alternative arrangements. outside of Whatcom County, so that we're going to have increased number of beds for those people who do need to be booked into this system. Because that seemed to be like one of the sticking points in the system right now, is making sure that when we do have offenders, we can at least enter them into the system and hold them if the courts deem that necessary.
Thank you, Councilmember Lillquist. Another point, he just spoke to the need for local advocacy at the state level with respect to legislation that was passed and the sort of fixes that were attempted, but where there's additional room for improvement with respect to that legislation and how it has impacted law enforcement's ability to do their job. And in addition, that accountability and sort of consequences piece certainly supported the uptick in crime that's been seen not only locally here and across the state and the nation, but really focusing on what can we do at a local level, and the call for, again, trying to fill those gaps with respect to, the need for additional treatment facilities and stabilization programs here locally, again, to address the sort of some of the root cause, right, related to what we're seeing with respect to crime. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Just to share another takeaway, because I've heard from several community members this concern, and then they put the perspective that our law enforcement isn't doing anything, or there's not enough. But some of our big box stores, because of company policy, is under-reporting or non-reporting because of liability. And so when you hear from community members that, they saw somebody go into one of these stores and go out with a big shopping cart full of stuff and nobody did anything, that's not necessarily something about our prosecutor, our jails, or our officers. It has to do with a company policy to not necessarily try to hold someone for police to come. So there's a little bit of that too. So one of the caveats is because some of these big box stores have reached above the threshold of allowable losses, they now will be looking at bringing in security, which might be able to help some of those situations to hopefully lessen Bellingham being a location to come and do theft.
And certainly his discussion highlighted just how complicated the issue is, and how just sort of the ripple effects throughout the community and the interconnectedness there, and attempted efforts at addressing these issues. Councilmember Anderson.
And I failed to mention that the prosecuting office is aware of that, and they have had conversations with store managers to try to figure out addressing some of this. And it might be locking some things up, but they're aware of it. They have had conversations. So hopefully there will be some more solutions in the future.
Certainly those partnerships between the city and county will continue in addressing the issues related to, jail space, as well as prosecution. So that item was for information only, and sort of paired with the second item that was before us this afternoon, which was Agenda Bill 23339. So that was a crime statistics data presentation where council had requested crime statistical data and explanations for the 2012 to 2021 period. And for that, we were joined by Deputy Chief Don Ulmer with the Bellingham Police Department. And he provided some information, detailed statistical data, but really that sort of paralleled what Prosecutor Ritchie was sharing with respect to the current obstacles and struggles within the community with respect to law enforcement. But what I heard quite clearly was the call, as Councilmember Anderson just highlighted, the need for continued reporting. And he shared information about the, so it's the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIDRS, and that crime data being available also through the WASPEC website. And the real need for, again, that reporting to continue. And it's interesting because here locally, it sounds like we report more often than some other jurisdictions, which then on a sort of a hierarchy of crime levels or reporting of incidents, we end up placing maybe higher on the list than we would if statistical data across the board was being collected equitably across all districts. But again, looking at, he highlighted as well, the corporate policies that Councilmember Anderson referenced, as well as, that was highlighting just the liability that individuals and companies, I think, are concerned with when they intervene, right, in criminal activity that they may see taking place. So the liability that if you were to confront someone or to come into a physical altercation with someone or try to hold them until law enforcement arrived, that liability for different companies really wasn't, in a cost benefit analysis, wasn't a wise use of resources, nor, a good place to put maybe your employees, a position to put your employees in. And so, as Councilmember Anderson mentioned, now reaching sort of that threshold of loss and the monetary value of loss, that it's hitting sort of that tipping point where now local companies looking to hire sometimes private security to assist with those enforcement efforts. And so again, that was another long presentation of maybe 45 minutes. I would recommend that the community, if you're interested in this information or wanting additional details, to go back and watch that presentation. Again, that was this afternoon during Committee of the Whole. Any other items from Deputy Chief Almer's report on highlight? Councilmember Hamel.
I'll just chime in here real briefly. We've had a long day, but I just wanted to put out there that the Blake decision by the state Supreme Court has been a driver for a lot of this activity. So why do you think people are taking the shopping cart full of tools out of the hardware store? They're going to sell those things and most likely then probably use those dollars for to purchase drugs. And the ones that I'm concerned about are the fentanyl, the car fentanyl, and the new, well, it's not new, it's biker meth from the 70s that's been rediscovered, unfortunately. And these are very serious drugs that are on the street, and they do drive some of the property crimes that we're seeing throughout Bellingham, and other communities see these types of crimes as well. But I just wanted to highlight that's part of it. And another part is the state legislature, their decision in the 2 sessions ago to produce about a dozen or so police reform bills. And then you combine that with, it's harder to recruit for police positions with departments across the state. It's not a Bellingham thing necessarily. And so my point is that we are having to kind of undo some of these things to make sure that people are not using drugs, that when they do, that there are off ramps for them to find treatment and intervention programs, so to build capacity for that. I know Rep. Rule has been working on that in terms of coming up with some funds to provide even more resources for treatment and intervention programs. So I just wanted to put that out there. And there is good news afoot that's happening. There's going to be an alternate response team coming up this year that will be able to respond to certain types of behavioral health calls. The 988 system should be running, I think, within 6 months or a year. And that's, again, to call that number instead of 911, you get a different type of response. We also have the LEAD program and the GRACE program. So there's been a number of different types of interventions that have been attempted here. And they're not all perfect and they don't work for everyone. But I just wanted to put it out there that it's not all bad news. There's plenty of good news. And just having met with other communities across the country over the course of the last 8 years, I think that Bellingham has really been doing as best we can when it comes to not having all the resources, but trying to come up with alternative solutions. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
I just wanted to dovetail on what Councilmember Hamel was covering. For the community members, because occasionally we do get these emails about, drug activity. And so because of legislator and some court decisions with the drug possession, it used to be if you arrested someone, often they had an option to go to treatment. So we've kind of lost that. And as it is now, it's a misdemeanor. And so if possession of fentanyl or something, you get a ticket, and then they can do something about it. But not to the level of what the public might be expecting. And that in the rules currently, or the law, there's no threshold or limit. And that was a discussion that was brought up. So if I had a pound, if they can't prove that I'm trying to distribute it, not a lot can necessarily, consequences aren't very big. So a comparative was Oregon, who has very similar laws, but they did have where if you had more than 6 ounces, then that moved it out of being considered minor. And we also discussed things like fentanyl. Thank goodness our legislation corrected some things so that youth and minors in possession is treated differently, because we definitely don't want our youth, under age 18 with unfettered access to this. So I would just highly encourage the public to contact your state representatives, because that's where those laws are going to be made and that's where changes will be made. So things like the quantity really does need to be considered, because nobody needs to be walking around with a pound of something. More than likely, it's not for personal consumption, and other drugs like fentanyl really should not be considered a lower classification of drug, because that is killing people. And so we really do need to look at those differently. So I know for myself, I'll be communicating to legislators on those concerns and a couple others, but I know the public sends us emails and we share those concerns, but it's not something we necessarily can legislate. It has to be at the state level. So send them to us and them.
Thank you. And yes, it was highlighted that how important those advocacy efforts are at a state level, because when those statutes and laws are being set at a state level, what we see is the fallout in some respects when there are some disconnects in what we hope were good intentions, but maybe have some missing gaps. But still locally, we have to contend with the implications of that. And as you mentioned, the evidence of ongoing use and addiction, and not wanting to criminalize the addiction, but to certainly do our part to try and end those cycles. So I would encourage members of the public to go back and watch those 2 presentations, as well as to advocate with your local representatives at the state level. And also mention again that the upcoming town hall on Monday night, again, will be focused on public safety. And so encouraging members of the public, if you have comments or things to share or concerns to raise, to please join us on Monday. So again, those presentations are available online, as well as in the council packet. So the next item before us this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23340. This is a Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendation for a new signature event focused on music. So the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, known as LTAC, issued a request for proposals seeking a new signature event. They're recommending the selection of Bellingham Exit, a new music-related signature event. This 4-day event will be held in downtown and occupy over 15 venues and host more than 80 performers during Bellingham's off-season for tourists and tourism. So in the packet was a memorandum which provided some additional information about the proposed event, but there was a motion made this afternoon to recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Williams. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Recuse.
And 1 recusal. So that passes 5-0-2 with Councilmember Hamel recused and Councilmember Huffman excused. Okay. And so again, more information will be coming forward, but definitely very exciting. And that is proposed for April of 2023, just to put that on everyone's calendar, something to look forward to. The next item before us this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23341. This was the 2022-2023 Consolidated Action Plan for Housing and Services. So in preparation for the 2022-2023 Consolidated Action Plan to be submitted to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, in mid-May, staff presented the full budget and draft resolution. So that is, the resolution is included in the packet, as well as copies of the presentation this afternoon. Just wanting to highlight, so that year starts July 1st and runs through June 30th. So that is the action plan year. And highlighting that the total is $27.7 million, but $15.5 million of that is carryover from prior allocations. So we're looking at $12.2 million in new funding. And 32% of this is coming from ARPA funds. And again, that focus on housing and services locally here. There was a motion made this afternoon to recommend approval and passage of the resolution, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 601 with Councilmember Huffman excused. Next this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23342. This was a discussion of an Immigrant Resource Center. So the Immigration Advisory Board, the IAB, has made a recommendation to the city to fund the creation of an Immigrant Resource Center. The attached proposal in the packet outlined their recommendation, and the mayor and staff discussed the process and next steps to evaluate the proposal. So this afternoon, we heard from Mayor Fleetwood and Deputy Administrator Brian Heinrich, as well as members of the Immigration Advisory Board Subcommittee that's been working on the proposal for an Immigrant Resource Center. We've heard from Homero Jose, Alfredo Juarez, Australia Tabone, Danielle Shedletsky, and Liz Darrow was also present this afternoon in that presentation. And the call for was further investigation and of an Immigrant Resource Center here in Bellingham. There was some discussion about whether this would be a specific center related to Bellingham or if it would be a county-wide initiative. And so the subcommittee shared a list of potential partners, so agencies and local organizations that have expressed an interest in partnering or being involved in some way in a resource center if one were to come to fruition. And so there was a motion this afternoon regarding sort of next steps, because it seemed as though the council had expressed previously policy with respect to policy considerations that yes, there was support for the idea, but question about where to go. And so the motion brought forward was to request that the mayor's office work to prepare or provide the council with operational model or models that would identify organizational structure as well as budget. And there was discussion about that being done as well, perhaps collaboratively with our legislative analyst, Mark Gardner, and additional resources to help support that investigation and legwork on the ground. So the recommendation came forward this afternoon, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 601 with Councilmember Huffman excused. The next item was Agenda Bill 23343. So this was consideration of amendments to the City Council Rules of Procedure to clarify the procedure and criteria for determining whether a council member's absence is quote unquote excused. Section 2.07 of the city charter states that quote, "A council member shall forfeit the office for failure to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings of the council without being excused by the council," end quote. Neither the city charter nor the city council rules of procedure provided guidance on the procedure and criteria for determining whether a council member's absence is excused, quote unquote. Council President Stone requested that the legal department provide city council with options for amending the city council rules of procedure to provide more guidance on absences. So in opening, I just wanted to share that this afternoon, the expectation was that our fellow colleague, Councilmember Holly Huffman, would be making the announcement herself, but these discussions came in the context of Councilmember Huffman expecting a child, and that child was born at 5:07 this morning. So congratulations to Councilmember Huffman. It was earlier than expected. So she was not with us this afternoon for the discussion, but there were a couple of items coming forward just wanting to formalize in city council policies of procedure how to address extended leaves of absence, whether that be related in this case to the birth of a child or medical illness or family emergency or whatever the circumstances may be. So there was some model guidance provided by the city attorney, which was included in the packet. Option 1 related to excused absences. So including an additional section that would state that members of the city council may be excused from a meeting by notifying the council president prior to the meeting and providing the reason for the inability to attend. The council president shall excuse the absence if it is for A, the death of a family member, B, family or personal illness, C, inclement weather, D, accident, E, scheduled vacation, F, family or personal emergency, G, city-related business, or H, unusual or unforeseen circumstances. Then following or prior to roll call, the council president shall inform the council of the member's absence and whether it is excused. And so previously, the decision about whether or not a council member's absence was excused or not has fallen to the individual who's serving as president at that particular time, and it's within their discretion to determine whether or not that absence is excused. But this option 1 would provide additional guidance regarding the criteria for an excused absence. Option 2 addresses specifically a leave of absence. So it reads that city council members who want to miss more than 2 consecutive meetings should request a leave of absence from the full city council. The city council shall vote to approve the leave of absence if it is for A, serious health or physical condition, B, birth, adoption, or foster placement of a new child, or C, some unusual and unforeseen circumstances that warrant approval of the leave. And so that was just stating that if the request for an excused absence was for a longer duration, rather than have that discretion fall solely to the individual serving as president at that time, calling for a vote of the full council if there would be an extended leave of absence. And the final section, related to option 3, has to do with appointment of a pro tem council member. So it reads that if a city council member's excused leave of absence will exceed 90 days in duration, city council may vote to select a pro tem council member to fill in for the council member on leave. City council shall follow the procedure for filling city council vacancies in section 13 of the city council rules of procedure to select the pro tem council member. And so it was highlighted this afternoon that within this third option, it does read that the city council may vote to select a pro tem council member as needed if the absence exceeds 90 days in duration, but is not required to do so. And so there was some extensive discussion among the council members related to sort of the cost benefit analysis of, the process to actually select and appoint a new council member, as well as what would be required of someone serving in that pro tem position, as well as acknowledgement of all of the ex officio duties that council members take on as elected officials here. And so it seemed as though consideration of a pro tem would probably be more likely in a situation where the absence may be expected to continue for a longer term and may actually result in the individual no longer being able to serve in their capacity as a council member. But it leaves that discretion still in the hands of the council if needed, but no obligation to appoint a pro tem. So this afternoon, there was a motion made for us to adopt options 1, 2, and 3 into our rules of procedure, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused. Also coming out of that discussion was a formal vote of the council to excuse a request from Councilmember Huffman for an extended leave of absence in connection with the birth of her child. And so the request at this time is for 12 weeks. We acknowledge that that request is beginning sooner than expected. So it may be open for further consideration in the future. But at this time, the motion is for Councilmember Huffman to be excused for a period of 12 weeks. And I so move.
Second.
Sometimes you guys are just on it. Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused. So I'll have to follow up with legal and see if, I'm assuming I need to state that Councilmember Huffman is excused for the next 12 weeks during every vote. So I'm going to get better at it, but I know City Attorney Mayor, it was more of a joke, but okay. So thank you for that. The next item before us this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23298. So this was a council debrief on town hall meeting, community voices on climate action. So during the committee of the whole, the full council debriefed and reflected on the first 2022 town hall meeting. The special meeting was held remotely on Monday, March 21st to hear from community voices on climate action. A link to the recording of this event is available through Engage Bellingham or on the City Council's meetings website. The discussion was for information only. And the second town hall meeting will be held remotely this coming Monday, May 16th, to hear from community voices on public safety. So there was some discussion this afternoon just related to procedures and policies related to the town halls and the just logistics of how those are handled and carried out. And just wanted to highlight again for members of the community that there is, with respect to language access, that there is ASL interpretation as well as Spanish, Punjabi, and Russian interpretation available during those town halls. So we hope that you will join us this coming Monday, May 16th. That was just for information only. There was no action taken. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is that through the Engage Bellingham website, there are open links for continued comment and feedback related to the topics discussed in the individual town halls. And those links will be open for the duration of the year for that feedback to continue to come in. And recordings of the meetings, those town hall special meetings, are available on our meetings website. So if you were not able to attend, you can go back and watch those meetings at your leisure. Okay. The next item before us this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23277. This was a discussion of in-person council meetings. So council meetings have been held remotely since COVID restrictions were put in place in March of 2020. On Friday, April 29th, Governor Inslee rescinded Proclamation 20-28. Effective June 1st, all meetings subject to the Open Public Meetings Act must be in person or hybrid. During the committee of the whole, the city council continued its discussion and its plan to return to in-person meetings. It was also highlighted by City Attorney Mariner that under House Bill 1329, there are still exceptions remaining for in-person meetings, but it does necessitate necessitates articulation of reasonable safety needs or requirements, reasons why you're not able to return to in-person meetings. So at this time, reasonable safety precautions could take the form of hybrid meetings, as well as social distancing, requiring masks regardless of immunization status, and similar measures. So this afternoon, there was a motion for basically for the council to provide further direction and discussion related to a return to council, but in the form of hybrid meetings. And basically what that would entail, but highlighting or specifying the specific safety precautions that would need to be in place. So that discussion will take place at our next meeting on May 23rd. So at this time, the motion is for us to come back on May 23rd with additional direction and discussion related to a potential return to chambers in a hybrid setting. And I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor will say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Or and abstentions? Okay, so that passes 5-1, being excuse me, Councilmember Hamel in a no vote and 1 excused, being Councilmember Huthman. Okay. So that was the end of regular business this afternoon. We have a set of meeting minutes for consideration from our April 25th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Williams and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huthman excused. Old and new business. Councilmember Hamel.
Thank you. I just want to get head nods from the council to work with our policy analyst, Mark Gardner, on some research that would address the Birchwood food desert. Instead of going to the grocery store, I want to see if we can bring the grocery store to residents of that neighborhood. And I want to see if there are other communities that have done that type of program. And so I just want to ask him if he can take a look into other communities and see if that's ever been done before.
Can I ask for one point of clarification? I thought I'd have to look back through my email, but I believe we received correspondence, right, that property has sold within the last year. And my understanding is that the underlying no compete clause is no longer in effect because it was tied to Albertsons owners, and that with the sale of that property, it's no longer applicable to that property. Does anyone else on council recall that correspondence? Okay, but I wanted to follow up on that. So it would be closely related. So I'm definitely in support. I see other hands up. I don't know if that's in connection with Councilmember Hamel's request, but okay. Any, looks like head nods. Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, this is in support of Dan's request. I'm trying to find it, Dan. There was one community, I think it was in New Mexico or Arizona. Took them 10 years to get the funding package together to close their food desert. I'll try to find that and feed it to Mark.
That'd be great. Any other feedback? Okay, thank you for raising that issue, Dan. Councilmember Hamel. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a couple of things over the last week with some of my committee liaison work. Just wanted to share that the Working Waterfront Coalition of Whatcom County received a $90,000 grant from the federal and state workforce development, which will help launch in September 15 apprenticeship opportunities working with local marine service industries. This is an incredible grant and an incredible opportunity to work with workforce training with our working waterfront. So just a big shout out. And for anybody who works in the marine service industry, perhaps get in touch with them about these apprenticeship opportunities, or if you have an interest, get in touch with them on their website. Another thing that I wanted to share is on Saturday, I had gone down to the Fisherman's Memorial that was held in the new Fisherman's Pavilion down at Zuanish Park. And just wanted to say kudos to the port and for the Fishermen's Association working hard to get that new pavilion. I've attended many memorials and the weather is always hit and miss. And so it was very nice to be able to be indoors with the doors open for plenty of air ventilation and a big window that has an overlook on the memorial. And I wanted to plant a seed because it was something that a couple of the organizers had told me, is that there's never been a proclamation given by council or the mayor's office on the memorial for the lost fishermen. So this event is usually the first weekend of May, and it would be wonderful if in April, whoever the council president is and with staff, I highly recommend and request that we do a proclamation in recognition of our lost fishermen and the sacrifice of their families for putting food on our table. And I kind of wanted to share, but I didn't want to, when we were making the motion. Anyway, the thought just left. I think perhaps it's just been too long of a day, so I'll stop at that.
Mayor Fleetwood.
Just in response to your idea, or the idea that was mentioned, Councilmember Anderson, I support that and happy to work with all of you in producing that proclamation. We'll do that next year.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilmember Martins.
Thank you so much. I've got another thing to say about the library. The Bellingham Central Library has engaged a library consulting firm, and there's now a community survey available online at the central location, as well as the Fairhaven and Berkeley branches. Online, it's through Engage Bellingham. It is both in English and Spanish. And they're just looking to get feedback on what our community right here and right now would love to see out of future locations of libraries and or services that they currently offer or building to in the future. So if you are a person who's enjoying the reading time at the Bellis Fair Mall, let us know that. If you're not in that area and you would like to see that in your neighborhood, that's a perfect place to let that be known. And that survey is open until May 31st. Thanks.
Wonderful. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you for recognizing me. I probably should just look at my notes when my memory fails. I also wanted to highlight that Dockside has resumed, and it's the first and third Saturday down at, if you go down to the waterfront, Zuanich Park, it is the gate 5 and 7. You can go down there, and I consider it an event that will be happening all summer and fall. You can go down and meet fishing families. You could purchase directly off the boats. I believe the port has taken this event over from the Working Waterfront Coalition. But even if you're not hankering to go buy some fresh crab or spotted prawns, it's really cool to take your kids down there and see the big boats and talk to the fishing families. I'm looking forward to taking my grandsons down there in a couple of weekends so that they can see a working waterfront. So mark it on your calendar, the first and third Saturdays. Head down to Zuanich Park on a nice day or even raining and go meet some of your fishing families out there.
Other items for old and new business? Okay, seeing none. We had executive session this afternoon. We had 2 items before us. So an executive session, the first was a potential litigation matter. Staff provided information on a potential litigation matter. This was for information and discussion only, and no action was taken. The second item was a potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition. This was for information and discussion only, and no action was taken. Next, we have consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Hamel and a second by Councilmember Williams. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused. Next, we have final consideration of ordinances. So the first is Agenda Bill 23326. This is an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington, relating to land use and zoning, extending a moratorium on development applications and permits relating to the redevelopment of existing mobile home or manufactured home parks, and setting 6 months as the effective period of the moratorium to allow the city to review options and draft regulations for the preservation of existing mobile home and manufactured home parks.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Hamel and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Holly Huffman, excused. Dan Hamel,
Aye.
Edwin H. Skip Williams,
Dan just made my vote. Aye.
Lisa Anderson,
Aye.
Michael Lillquist,
Aye.
Christina Michelle Martins,
Aye.
Hannah Stone, aye. Passes 6-0 with Councilmember 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused. Next, we have Agenda Bill 23327. This is an ordinance amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget, increasing revenues and expenditures and adding positions.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Williams for third and final and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Dan Hamel,
Aye.
Edwin H. Skip Williams,
Aye.
Lisa Anderson,
Aye.
Michael Lillquist,
Aye.
Christina Michelle Martins,
Aye.
Hannah Stone, aye. And Holly Huffman, excused. That passes 6-0-1 with Councilmember Huffman excused. Any other business before the council this evening? No? Okay. Seeing none, I know it's been a very long day. Thank you very much. There were lots of robust discussion and time hopefully well spent. I just want to highlight that our next regular council meeting will be Monday, May 23rd, 2022. And before then, we will have our town hall on Monday, May 16th at 6:00 p.m. So until then, we are adjourned. Thank you very much and have a good night.